You've heard all the stories about tech giants starting in a garage, right? Well, this one's a little different. This story starts over a bowl of porridge. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible, unlikely, underdog story of how Xiaomi took on the world. I mean, this quote from the founder, it just says it all, doesn't it? It immediately tells you this is not some stuffy corporate tale. Nope, this is about a handful of people with a massive, crazy ambition. And get this, the company's name, Xiaomi? It literally means millet. It's a constant reminder of that humble, revolutionary start. Okay, so here's the first big question. How in the world do you start a phone company when you know nothing, and I mean nothing, about building hardware? Well, the answer is you don't. You do something much, much smarter. You pivot. You start with the one piece of the puzzle you can actually control, the software. And what's so brilliant about this is their focus. Think about it. Building an entire operating system from scratch, that's a massive, almost impossible task. So they didn't. They didn't try to boil the ocean. They just picked count them, four key functions: calling, messaging, contacts, and the home screen. And they decided to perfect those on a system that already existed, Android, for phones that, get this, they didn't even make yet. It was just so simple, it was genius. So they've got this new software named MIUI. Now they just need people brave enough to test it. They go to an online tech forum, and you're not going to believe this, 100 people actually volunteered. They took a huge leap of faith installing this totally unknown software on their own phones. And as a thank you, which I think is just the coolest thing, Xiaomi put all 100 of their names right on the boot screen of that very first version. And then the magic started to happen. Pure word of mouth. With absolutely zero advertising, that user base doubled in the second week. And then it doubled again in week 3. And then, you guessed it, it doubled again in week 4. This thing was just exploding. It was all the proof they needed that their software-first idea was a home run. And then came the moment that changed everything. A really well-respected tech guru on this huge international forum, XDA, stumbled upon MIUI, and he was just floored. He writes this rave review, and that one post, that single post, put this tiny team from Beijing on the global map, literally overnight. So let's just recap. In less than a year, they've got more than 300,000 users, they've built this massive, super loyal community, the Mi fans, and they haven't even built a single piece of hardware yet. Their first big bet? It paid off big time. Okay, so they've got the OS, they've got the fans, now it was time for the real test, the ultimate gamble. Moving from pixels on a screen to a physical phone you could hold in your hand. And believe me, this next chapter is where things get really crazy. If you're going to build the best phone, you need the best parts, right? For them, that meant getting screens from Sharp. The problem? Sharp was a giant, and Xiaomi was, well, nobody. Sharp wouldn't even take their calls. They had to pull every favor they had just to get a meeting. And then, just when they get it, disaster. A massive earthquake rocks Japan, followed by a nuclear alert, and their trip is just days away. So what do? Do you go? The risk was insane, but this was maybe their only shot. They decided to go, and this one detail just gives me chills. They got on the plane to Osaka, and they were the only 3 passengers on the entire flight. Just them. That level of commitment, showing up in the middle of a national crisis, that's what finally convinced the execs at Sharp to take a chance on them. All right, so they get the best parts. Crisis averted, right? Wrong. A new crisis hits, and this one's a big one. Their plan was to sell the phone for 1499 yuan, but with all these top-tier components, the actual cost to build the phone was almost 2,000 yuan. They were looking at losing a ton of money on every single phone they sold. So now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. What do? Do you stick to your original price and just eat a massive, potentially company-killing loss? Or do you raise the price to 1999 yuan? A price point where no local brand had ever survived, and risk nobody buying your phone at all? They chose to risk it. Picture the launch event. The place is so packed with fans that the founders themselves can barely get inside. You can just imagine the CEO's heart pounding in his chest as he walks on stage and announces the price, 1999 yuan. And the crowd? They didn't boo. They didn't walk out. They erupted. For a full half minute, it was just pure, deafening cheers. They knew. The fans knew this was a game changer. And that phone? It went on to sell over 7 million units. it was nothing short of a miracle. It completely shattered all expectations and proved without a doubt that Xiaomi was now a real player in the hardware game. But they weren't content with just one hit phone. Oh no, the next phase was all about scaling. It was about taking that core idea, amazing quality at a fair price, and applying it to a whole ecosystem of products. And the story of the Redmi phone is the perfect example. They designed this great, affordable phone for everybody. But when the first prototype was done, the founder looked at it and just wasn't happy. He felt it wasn't good enough, it didn't live up to their standards. So he made a gut-wrenching decision: throw it all out and start from scratch. And let me be clear, this was a huge deal. Scrapping that design meant lighting 40 million yuan in R&D costs on fire. A massive financial blow. But they did it anyway, all for the sake of quality.
And you know what? That gamble paid off. Big time. The new redesigned Redmi, which they launched from like the most boring, basic conference room ever, went on to sell over 44 million units. It became such a phenomenon, it basically kickstarted the entire local supply chain.
This way of thinking went way beyond phones. They saw people flying to Japan just to buy these expensive rice cookers, and they thought, wait a minute, we can do better. So they built their own. And here's the kicker. A Japanese TV station did a blind taste test on the streets of Japan, and the Xiaomi rice cooker won. It beat the fancy, expensive local brands, and it cost a fraction of the price. Insane.
So when you step back and look at all these moments, the software pivot, that crazy trip to Japan, the pricing crisis, throwing out the first Redmi, you start to see a pattern. There's one single powerful idea that connects everything.
And this is it. This is the core of their entire philosophy. Every single breakthrough they had, every single one, came right after they took a massive risk. They didn't win by being cautious. They won by looking impossible choices right in the eye and betting on themselves every single time. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? The story of Xiaomi isn't just about phones or rice cookers. It's proof that real success doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from staring risk in the face and going for it. So the question isn't just about them anymore. It's about you. What risk will you face?